Excellent. Welcome, Andrea. It's so nice to have you here. We just discovered, and you were referred to have this interview by a mutual friend of ours that I just found out that you've been a longtime friend of hers, and it's very pleasing for me to have you be here with us today. Thank you. So what state are you calling in from?
California.
Okay. And how old is your son?
My son is 27.
27. Okay. So today we're be talking about the rich relationship of mother and son. Again, so grateful
Okay.
that you're here. So I'm going to share a picture with you, Andrea. Give me just a second. And I want you to just feel it's just a picture, but I'm going to add to you. Can you see it?
Yes.
So there's a mother sitting in front of her son, and she's just said to him, "Your father is a jackass." And he's standing there with donkey ears and a donkey tail. So the quote that I'd like to hear your wisdom and thoughts about is, what sons hear and feel from their mothers about men and maleness contributes to the kind of man they will become. Do sons internalize their mother's thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and emotions about men and maleness? Her thoughts about men and maleness. Floor is yours, dear.
I believe so.
Mm.
Of course, my own experience is limited to my interaction with my son. I remember when he was very little, he was maybe 8 years old. Now, this is an experience that my ex-husband, I call him my husband, had with my son, but it has a lot to do with our relationship. My older child is a girl. She's 7 years older than my son. And one day, his dad came and picked him up, and they were going to his house. And they were just having random conversation, the kind of conversation you'd have with an eight-year-old. And his dad told me that in the middle of the conversation, totally unrelated, he asked his dad, "Dad, who is going to take care of Mom and Michelle?" That's my daughter. And his dad didn't understand what he meant. He's like, the question was totally out of place to what they had been talking about. So he said, "Well, what do you mean?" And the 8-year-old child said, "Well, I'm not there. Who's going to protect them?"
He used the word protect.
Yes. And his dad said he almost had to pull over. He had tears in his eyes. He could not believe that this 8-year-old boy understands the whole concept of a male's role in a home, especially when you're the only one. Because, of course, he was old enough. He knew my dad lives over there, and my mom and my sister live here, and I live with my mom and my sister. So I believe that, you know, children, not only boys, they understand a lot more than they can explain. And in that regard, to answer your first question, this was answer to your second question. I do believe that what we say, the words we choose or don't choose, tells more than we think. So that was a very sad picture, with the mother and the boy with the ears and the tail. Because in essence, we willfully, sometimes not willfully, how do I say this? A young boy expects to become his father. He expects that one day he's going to be a dad. So at some point he's going to have a girlfriend who's probably going to become his wife, and he's going to be a father. So when you, in this case, the mother telling the son, making a snide remark about his father, you're telling him what he is or what he's going to be. So that's what I see in that picture.
And
Again,
how is it, Andrea, if you can tell us why it is that you feel so strongly that that's true?
well, children by and large, they believe what we tell them,
Mhm.
even if later on they realize that it was false or not accurate. What we tell our kids, that's the gospel to them,
Mm.
you know? So we have to be very careful what we say, how we say, because everything that we do is teaching them something. So this mother, no, maybe she was exactly right. Maybe her relationship with her husband was such that she felt she could say that, but she's talking to the product of that union. She's talking to this boy, and you're saying something about his father. So you're, in essence, talking to him and telling him what he is.
Mhm.
We sometimes don't think before we talk, and being a parent is a learning experience. I've
Mhm.
had to learn a lot of things as I went along. I'm grateful for my older child because she taught me a lot. So things were kind of easier for my son. And, that's another conversation because I had to sit them both down and explain that. But yeah, what we say and how we say it is of, you know, it we it's understated, totally understated. um my experience with my son in terms of who I wanted him to become as a man started when I realized that I would be his primary parent. He would live with me. I wanted to raise a sensitive child, not a sensitive son, but a sensitive child. And I sensitivity, you don't have to teach a girl sensitivity. Girls usually are born with this whole, they talk more, they express themselves more. Boys are a little different. You really have to teach them how to be sensitive, and you have to teach them how to express themselves and not be afraid. So, for example, I spent a lot of time talking to my son, even more than I did when my daughter was his age, because I wanted him to understand that it's okay to talk. It doesn't matter how you feel. Let's just talk about it. If you
Mhm.
fall and you're hurt, when anyone falls and they hurt, they cry. If that's what you feel like doing, go right ahead. If you're happy about something, let's celebrate it. If you don't know how you feel about something, it's okay to see if maybe you can understand how you feel about it. But it begins by talking. And I made it plain to him, very, very clear, over and over and over. I want you to come and talk to me about anything you want to,
Mhm.
anything at all. So we spent many, many hours, days, months, and years just talking about stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm happy to say, thank God, now my son is very sensitive. He has never, until very recently, told me no.
Mhm.
He would say, "That's not a good idea, mom." Or he would smile, or he would find some other way to say no. But the words no never came out of his mouth, because he knows me. And
Mhm.
he's very sensitive to how I feel. And somehow he thinks if he tells me no, I'm going to get upset. I don't know where he got that from.
Mhm.
Because I always say no is a response, just like yes.
Mhm. So
Don't
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Don't what?
don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah.
If you're asked a question or in a situation where the answer is no, say no.
Yeah.
It's better to say no and then change your mind than to say yes and then change your mind.
Mm. So if I can, just to kind of bring this back to the point of like when you were raising him,
Hmm.
how conscious were you of how you spoke about men and maleness, or how you even felt about men and maleness while he was growing up? And that was that, relayed to him unconsciously or consciously, if you could speak to that.
Yes, I overtly made sure I never said anything negative about his father.
Because,
Well, because I had a lot of negative things to say. And
but,
I knew that if potentially it could affect him, I did not want that, because we are given a very short time with our children.
Mhm.
Everything that you know, and so in this case, everything I knew or about his father, he would one day discover for himself. So there's no need for me to tell him anything. He's going to figure it out his own. So I
So you were
made sure.
conscious about it.
Oh yes, oh yes, very intentional. Never said anything bad about the father.
Mhm.
And because, like I said, and your children realize that they belong to the both of you, right? There's a mother and there's a father. At some point, your parents loved each other, in his case. Well, by the time he got old enough to understand, that wasn't the case anymore.
Mhm.
But he was born from a love between two people.
Mhm.
I didn't want him to ever think that it was his fault why his parents weren't together
Mhm.
or anything. I didn't want any negative thoughts whatsoever
Mhm.
about his mom and his dad to
Yeah.
affect him in any way. So I just left that part out. Plus, I I was aware, because when he was little, it was being reinforced more that ex-spouses should never say, even if it's true, anything negative about the other
Mhm.
parent to the
Mhm.
kids.
Got it.
And I
So,
could see how that would be harmful.
got it. Thank you for the clarity. So what about your beliefs in general about maleness? Like that men are this or men are that, or were you conscious of that as he was growing up to deliver that as well, or to refrain from using, any judgments about men in general? Is that in that same vein of imprinting him?
Well, I just never stayed away from the negative comments,
Whether it
because in
was his father or other men?
right, just in
Oh,
general,
okay.
because people are people.
Mm,
I have a brother, right? I have a father, right? My grandfather, my uncles, my cousins, excellent men of great quality in my family. So I would not make a general statement, a general negative statement towards men when my bad experience was with this one who I chose,
mhm,
because I had so many more positive experiences in my life up until then.
mhm. Okay.
So I'm not one to make a sweeping comment, especially a negative comment about anybody.
Okay, great. So you were aware of not just speaking negatively about his father, but also about men in general. You're just aware of
Yes,
that. Okay.
yes.
Well, I so appreciate your thoughts. Is there anything else that you want to share about just the imprint? I'm just picturing back to that very telling story about your son when he was 8. It is knowing this, at that young
Yeah.
age of just like the
Yes.
role for a man, and saw
Yes.
himself
And
in that role
yeah,
already.
I don't recall ever saying anything like that to him,
I'm sure.
because I wanted him to grow up as a boy, and then he'd become a teenager, and then so I never put that pressure. I made sure I never put the pressure on him. Now, when we were walking down the street, I would explain, okay, if you're ever walking with a lady, you walk on the outside. I would say stuff like that. I don't know if he understood that to mean, well, you need to protect her, because I
Yeah,
never said that. But
right.
maybe just from my teaching him how to behave as a man, he
Yeah.
just took it and ran with it. Oh
Wow.
no,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes. I'm
I
curious
don't
to
know.
if you're open, Andrea, to share if you had a conversation with him about that after you heard it from your former husband, and if your former husband had anything to say about that to him that you remember.
No,
A
I
long
don't
time.
remember. And if he probably, well, he was 8 or so. He wasn't 10. He was way younger. So he may not even have been 8 years old, but I can ask him if he remembers that conversation.
No, if
And
you
his
remember,
dad,
If you
Oh,
remember, if you had a conversation with your son after you found out he
oh,
said that.
no, no,
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. And
No,
how you're, sorry.
we were both just blown away by the whole experience.
Yeah. And so you don't know what your former husband even said to him.
No, no, he said all he could muster up, he was so almost burst into tears. He said all he could say, well, that's why we pray. So when you're not there, you pray that God will protect your sister and your mom until you go back home. That's what he told him.
Dad.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Wow, what a
yeah.
touching story. I think that's so telling on so many levels, and I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy that. I just so appreciate you being here today and sharing your wholehearted mothering and thoughts about how we imprint our sons if we do.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
I'm very proud of my children. Not to say I'm not proud of my daughter, but I think that more of us mothers should pay just a little bit more attention to our sons, so men will be better,
Mm.
you
Is
know.
there
But a lot of,
mothers are a key to that?
yes, I think so, because unfortunately a lot of us are single mothers,
Yeah.
you know. Either by the time your son is of age, you're not married anymore, or you're not in a
Mhm.
relationship anymore, or
Yeah.
you just weren't in a relationship and you have children. It's very hard to provide for them and make sure they're okay and check their homework and take them
I
to
know.
school and pick them up from school and make sure they have something to eat. It's unless you consciously realize that you need to set time just to talk to them and teach them what you want them to know,
Yeah.
it won't happen.
Yeah.
And by the time you look around, they're 10 and 12 and 15 and have no interest in talking to you anymore, you
Exactly.
know,
Or
and it's
27.
over. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's a girlfriend, and the girlfriend is
Right.
complaining, well, he won't this and he won't that, you know, and I didn't want that. I did not want that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being a conscious mother all this time. Our planet needs it. Our planet needs
Thank you.
it. I love it. So appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Well, I can't get my phone to stop this recording, Andrea. Hold on a second. Here we go. Oh, record, stop. Stop recording.